Hello beautiful dragon people, it's me, your pal Vero, here to bring you some more of that Dragon Prince content to tide you over till the next season is finally released. Today in the form of a review of the first graphic novel set in the Dragon Prince universe, Through the Moon. And I gotta tell you guys, when this was coming out, I was through the moon with excitement. I'm sorry, I'll show myself out. I already did a non-spoiler video for this about a month ago, so if you're still on the fence about whether or not you're going to be buying it and you're just waiting to hear someone else's opinion on it, I definitely recommend it, definitely buy it. If you're a fan of the Dragon Prince, if you're enough of a fan of the Dragon Prince to be watching this YouTube channel, then you're definitely going to want to have this book. It's a must-have for any Dragon Prince fan. So, let's get right into it.
Our story begins with Rayla in an icy, twisted version of the Storm Spire. She sees several columns of ice in front of her, and she cautiously approaches them, and she is filled with shock and horror as she realizes the face of her old mentor, Runan. He is trapped in ice, and she sees several other moon shadow elves trapped in ice as well, and as she gets closer she realizes that they are in fact her parents! She uses her fists to try to break through the ice, but to no avail. Viren approaches from behind her, asking if she likes his collection, and noting that he has added another using his hand to wipe away the frost. It is revealed that Callum has now been trapped in another column of ice. Rayla takes out her blades, commanding Viren to get away from him. Viren then prepares a powerful black magic spell, telling her that it's too late and that she will be joining the rest of them very soon. A massive blue feather is seen in the sky. As she awakens, a blue feather is touching her face. She gets up to see the familiar faces of Callum and Ezrin. Callum explains that the feather that he was using to gently wake her was the feather of Lujanne's dead phoenix Fifi. Rayla asks about it in confusion, and Ezrin explains that they have received a letter from Lujanne about the feather. He goes on to explain that Fifi sacrificed herself to get them to the Storm Spire and that they all owe Fifi everything. Lujanne also explained in the letter that they need to bring the ghost feather, which is the feather he is holding, to the Moon Nexus, where they can perform a ritual that will help her become reborn. But they must get there by the new moon. Rayla points out that the new moon is only 3 days away, so they need to get up and get moving immediately in order to make it to the cursed caldera in time. Rayla asks a very logical question here about whether or not Ezrin can accompany them on their journey, seeing as he has very important kingly duties to do now. But Ezrin explains that it's important and that he and Soren will only be gone for a few days. He left a note for Opeli, who seems absolutely overjoyed to be taking on all this responsibility with no notice, and Ezrin asks them to meet him in the courtyard in an hour. Now alone in the room together, Callum and Rayla have a moment to talk. Callum asks if she's still been having trouble sleeping, and she explains that she has. The cause of her problem is her anxieties that Viren could still be out there somewhere. Callum points out that Viren is dead and there's no possible way he could have survived the fall, which is a totally reasonable thing to believe, seeing as the last time he saw Viren he was doing this. But Rayla is not able to shake her own intuition. She seems frustrated that everyone is so ready to move on when she is not. There is obvious tension between the two of them, as Callum is ready to move on with his life, but Rayla still can't let go of all that has happened with Viren. She can't shake her fears that Viren, the man who has taken everyone that she has ever cared about in her life, is still out there and could possibly return and take Callum as well. The two have a little spat, but they're able to get through it in the typical adorable way that they do. They then decide that a vacation might be just what they both need. So Rayla, Callum, Soren, and Ezrin all set out to the cursed caldera. On their way there, they are scared by the giant spider, but Rayla, not being fazed by illusions, quickly walks up and touches it, and then freaks out because as she touched it, she could actually feel it, instead of her hand passing through it like an illusion. This is when Lujanne appears, exclaiming that she got Rayla good. Callum is surprised and asks how she was able to make them solid, and she explains that it was due to her new companion, a man named Alan. Alan politely introduces himself, and he is very adorable and gives off major cool uncle vibes. Rayla and Callum both recognized him as the big guy with the big sword who got it chopped in half by the Sunforge blade back in the town. They also note that he ran off crying. Lujanne is amused by this, as Alan hadn't told her about this part, but he retorts that there's nothing wrong with crying, and she is charmed by him and loves that he's a big strong man with big strong feelings. Lujanne then explains how Rayla was able to touch the illusion instead of passing through it, and it was revealed that Alan had created a solid wooden spider that she then puts the illusion on top of, so it gives the illusion of it being solid.
So I'm actually really confused by how illusion magic works in the Dragon Prince universe. So Alan makes the spider illusion feel real because the illusion is being projected on top of something that is physically there. But I thought that illusions already felt solid because we see Ava has a leg. Because we see Ellis clearly holding Ava's leg in her hand. Also, we see the giant slug monster get really stabbed and falls to the ground at the end. And when it hits the ground, it does like this loud thud, and like mist and dust kind of like unsettles from the force of it physically hitting the ground. So was the ground shaking and the stab and the blood, was that all illusion? Was that all part of it? Was that all part of the illusion? What did Rayla stab? If there was nothing there, did she feel it? Wouldn't she have known that her blades were cutting through air? Doesn't she know the difference between cutting through nothing and cutting through something? Also, we see them like when they're eating the slugs, and like when they're eating the food with the slugs, right? They're not like holding them like slugs, they're holding them like the foods that they're supposed to be. So how does the iced cream fit into all of this?
Iced cream.
The iced cream.
Iced cream.
Why does the moon opal necklace for Ava give her like permanent leg power, but Callum has to break it to do the History of 𝑚𝑯𝑹𝑒𝑚 spell at the Storm Spire? Why do some give ultimate power, but some have to be broken to do the spells? Is it the spell? What spell gives you unlimited illusion? That seems really awesome.
Iced cream.
So what's with the slugs and the iced cream?
Iced cream.
And then the dog paws. How does it fit together? How does it all fit together? How does it all fit together? Sorry about that. I got a little, moving on.
Ezrin pipes up and tells Lujanne that he would like to honor Fifi for her sacrifice. He hands her the phoenix's feather, and even though Lujanne knows that she will be reborn as part of the cycle, she is still saddened by how much she misses her. She then invites everyone to go get some food, and all of them quickly explain that they brought their own food this time and that they do not need to eat any grubs. Lujanne asks how long Rayla and Callum have been a thing. Callum begins to tell a story about their first kiss in the Midnight Desert, and Rayla hides her face from embarrassment and says that they shouldn't bring that part up. Callum then asks Lujanne how she and Alan had met. Lujanne explains that it was right after she had sent Ezrin off with Fifi. She was traveling the human towns, disguised as a human on her way back, and she met Alan, and one thing led to another. Then she goes on to say that she was glad that Fifi was able to help, and very pleased that her sacrifice made a difference. But did it? Asks Rayla. She is still upset that Viren, the most dangerous man in the world, has not been found, and that everyone wants to believe he's dead, but Callum cuts her off and says that there's something that he wanted to show Lujanne. He then goes on to proudly say that he knows the 𝐀𝐧𝐝 𝐅𝐴𝐼𝐿. Lujanne says that they have been over this before, and that since he wasn't born with a connection to the Sky Primal, there's no way that he could and then he blasts Aspero. All the foods and plates go flying off the table with a big gust of wind. Later that evening, the sun begins to set and the group gathers down by the water. Lujanne tells Ezrin that it is now a good time, and that he can place Fifi's feather into the water. As he does, the feather ignites a small glow, the color of moonlight. Lujanne then explains that there is a cycle in the world, life and death. It is the core of all things. The moon embodies the cycle. Bit by bit it will fade away, then bit by bit it will brighten. The group holds hands as she continues the ceremony. She speaks for a bit about the nature of life and death and rebirth, waiting for Fifi to re-emerge from the water. They sit in silence for a moment as she says that she can never seem to get the timing quite right. A moment passes, and nothing happens. But then a huge burst of blue light emerges out of the water, and a single blue egg now floats towards them. Lujanne picks it out of the water and cracks it open, and out drops a small baby phoenix. And it's probably the cutest thing that I've ever seen in my life. And so they've done it! Mission accomplished! Fifi has been reborn, and they all look on in wonder. The group begins to make their way back towards the dormitories when Rayla breaks off from the group. No one seems to notice except for Callum. Rayla returns to the water seated alone, tossing some small stones into the water. Callum clumsily approaches out of the woods, and Rayla tells him to join her, even though she was kind of looking for some alone time. They sit there together and reflect on what Lujanne had talked about life and death, and how great it would be if other people could come back in the same way that Fifi had. Rayla brings up the fact that the Nexus used to be used as a portal to a place between life and death. She wishes that Lujanne would do something useful instead of just using illusions and saying empty words. She wishes that she could go into the portal and check to see if her parents were actually there. She's so frustrated and afraid, and when Callum tries to tell her that he understands what she's going through, she explodes at him, criticizing him for wanting her to move on. He tries to remind her that she's not the only one who's lost people in this conflict, but she is even more upset about the fact that she doesn't have any answers. At which point he says that yeah, she does have answers. One of the people she's so worried about killed his stepfather. After that, there's not much left to be said between the two of them. She says that they haven't moved on, and that no one has. She leaves him behind, telling him that he can keep believing in illusions if it makes him feel better. Callum asks her to wait, but is left alone under the moon. That night, Rayla has another dream, seeing Callum trapped in ice. As she approaches, the ice explodes, revealing Viren hidden inside. She violently awakens and screams, before realizing that this was yet another dream. She looks over to Callum, who is still asleep in a bed across from her, and she is able to calm herself down. Some time passes and Callum awakes alone in the room, lamenting the fact that Rayla was gone. He realizes that he could use some advice on how to proceed, and when it comes to asking advice, there's only one person at the Moon Nexus you need to go to. So he heads to the Moon Temple and asks Lujanne, who's quite surprised by his sudden appearance while she's trying to meditate. She gives him some very basic advice about how fighting is pretty normal in a relationship, but also gives her classic illusion type advice about maybe the truth isn't even what she needs or wants. And Callum realizes at this point that this is probably not the best advice. She also says that if the truth isn't good, then maybe what you need to do is tell little white lies. Now Callum is a lot wiser than that and decides that he will probably not be pursuing that line of thinking. But he does decide to take the moon opal from her. While he's there, he also inquires about the portal that she had mentioned to him before. The portal between life and death. She explains that in the days of old, elves would come here to get closure for their loved ones, but it was used very rarely because it was incredibly dangerous. It is easy to get trapped on the other side and to lose their mind. She also goes on to mention that it doesn't matter because the moon hinge was destroyed, and without it the moon portal cannot be opened. He asks about perhaps there is a way that he could rebuild the moon hinge so that it could be used in the future, to which she gives a very stern no. She says that it was destroyed for a reason, because humans cannot be trusted with its power. The story then shifts focus to Soren and Alan having a friendly brawl of wooden swords. Then Rayla comes in and cheap shots Alan and Soren trips her, which I mean, she kinda has coming because she wasn't playing fair or playing at all. She tells Soren that she actually wanted to talk to him and the two of them go off alone. Meanwhile, Callum is over at the moon hinge. He breaks the object he was given in order to cast the History of 𝑚𝑯𝑹𝑶𝑖𝑗 spell, a spell that we have seen used twice on the show to show the past. He studies the ancient moon shadow elves rituals and believes that it might be possible to open the portal again. Back with Soren and Rayla, they are having a very heavy conversation. She asks him about what happened to the elves during that night that they attacked the castle, and it's very obvious that this conversation is not one that either of them really wants to have. Soren soberly tells her that they were all killed and their bodies turned into magical stuff by his father. Well, all except for one. One of them was caught on the balcony, and she's able to surmise on the information that is given to her that it was in fact Lujanne. Soren then tries to change the subject. Soren reminds her that they don't have to talk about this, but she pushes on. She wants to know what happened to him. Soren doesn't know exactly what had happened after Lujanne was taken away, but he does tell her that he doubts that he would have lived for long. Rayla asks with a bit of hope in her voice that he doesn't know that Lujanne is dead for sure. Instead of an answer, he smashes his wooden sword into the ground angrily. He says that he thought he had killed his father back at the Battle of the Stormspire, but it was just an illusion. And when he realized that, he felt relieved afterwards, but now he thinks that maybe it would have been better if he did kill him. It is here that she realizes that he too was bothered by the fact that they never recovered Viren's body. He says that his father has always been so good at fooling people and that maybe he's done it again. The day passes and the moon rises, and Rayla returns home to the moon dormitories where she catches up with Callum. They have an awkward exchange when she apologizes for leaving in the morning without seeing him first. She explains that she thought Soren might have some information about what had happened to Lujanne. She then asks him what he's been up to today, and he tells her that he's been doing some research about the portal. He tells her that he might have found a way to make it work, which excites her very much. But then he goes on to tell her that they will have to repair the moon hinge, which will be a problem. Mostly because he was told specifically by Lujanne not to do it. He also goes on to tell her about the dangers and how people could lose their minds and be lost and trapped forever on the other side of the portal. None of this information seems to bother her quite as much as him also telling her that she would have to swim in water. He quickly withdraws it and says that it was a bad idea anyway, but she resolves herself and says no, that this is something that she has to do because it's the only way she's ever going to truly be able to be sure that Viren is truly dead. She then asks him if he's going to be able to do moon magic now. He explains that he has a few moon opals that he got as a gift from Lujanne, but was also explicitly forbidden from messing with the portal, so they will have to lie to her. He tells Rayla that since she's an illusionist, she would probably do the same thing. Rayla then says that if they are going to do this, that she will be going into the water alone. The idea of her going to alone is an idea that Callum is not fond of. He reluctantly agrees, but with a condition that the second it seems that she's in danger, he will be diving in after her. She tries to say no, but he refuses to help otherwise, saying that this is just the way it's going to be. She agrees and thanks him. The two of them have a nice moment where they're able to reconnect. He then asks if she and Alan are friends now. The next day, the two of them go and talk to Alan about repairing the moon hinge and keeping it a surprise for Lujanne, telling him that this is going to be part of some trick that they're going to play on her. Alan, being a good man, is helpful, and they begin construction, keeping it a secret from Lujanne. Some time passes and the construction is fairly complete. They're using a complex rig of wheels and ropes to hold the broken pieces of the moon hinge in place. They're very excited that they finally finished, and Soren is pretty worn out. Soren and Alan then head back to the main area, leaving Rayla and Callum alone. He asks if they're really going to do this, and she says that it is now or never. Callum stands up and smiles and says, well, let's get moving. He breaks the moon opal and begins to copy what he had seen during the History of 𝑚𝑯𝑹𝑒𝑚 spell. The moon hinge ignites with magical moon energy as he continues to do the dance he had seen. Part of the moon hinge comes loose though. He quickly casts a spell, causing the entire system of ropes and wheels to collapse and all the pieces of the newly repaired moon hinge to fall back into rubble. But they are able to see that the moon nexus has ignited with blue moon energy. The portal is open, but they're not the only ones who see that the moon nexus is glowing. Lujanne, seeing it, quickly heads off towards it, suspecting what Callum and Rayla have done. Lujanne calls out to them, but Rayla will hear none of it. She quickly jumps off the edge into the lake and disappears under the surface of the water. When she resurfaces, her eyes are closed and she appears to be unconscious. Lujanne angrily asks Callum what he had done. Rayla passes through the water on the other side, crawling out. Making her way forward, she sees that the moon in the sky is nothing more than a black void. She tells herself the people she's looking for: Viren, Lujanne, her parents. She wonders to herself if they could be around and not really knowing how to find them. She appears to be the only one in the entire area. She continues to make her way further into the moon portal. As she hears something behind her, she quickly draws her weapons and turns around but there's nothing. So she continues forward, but she can't shake the feeling that she's being followed. As she continues walking through the woods, she sees the castle of 𝐀𝐧𝐝. She begins to head off towards the castle when 4 spectral creatures appear behind her. Back in the real world, the entire gang has gathered, watching Rayla. Callum asks if there's anything they can do to help her and if she is okay. She tells him that she is okay for now, but certainly not safe. And then she scolds him for not listening to her when she told him how dangerous it was. She's upset with him, but with herself for underestimating humans yet again. Callum asks if they can just pull her out, and she responds that if they do that, she will lose her mind forever, her soul and mind being trapped forever on the other side, and on this end she'll just be an empty husk. She then says that they will just have to wait and hope that Rayla will be able to find her way back before sunrise, and that waiting is all they can do. If she doesn't make it back before sunrise and the portal closes, she will be lost forever. Back through the portal, Rayla is running as she is being chased by the dark, spectral, moonshadow elf assassins that she had traveled with into the human kingdoms that fateful day she met Callum. It's not long before she is unable to evade them anymore. She turns to face them. They call her a traitor, scolding her for not being able to kill. They charge her and they fight. They tell her that she lied to them, and that since she let a human live, she had killed all of them. They tell her that the mission was a failure because of her. She's pushed into a corner and she tries to explain herself. One prepares to strike her down with a killing blow, but is stopped as they see that the binding on her hand is gone. They ask in confusion if she had completed their mission, meaning killing Prince Ezrin. Before she can explain herself, they disappear, believing that their souls can now rest because of their mission being completed. She is left alone in the rain, trying to explain that the Dragon Prince is alive and that none of this needed to happen. Nobody had to die. She then resolves for the real reason she's here. She shouts for Viren, demanding to know where he is. She continues forward and finds herself in a mysterious cave, and as she gets closer she sees a cocoon of some kind, and inside it lies Viren. Several spectral spirits of soldiers grab her, pulling her down, but not before Viren realizes that she was there. Back on the other side, they see her panicking in the water, and Callum attempts to jump in there, but Lujanne will not allow him. She tells him that if he dives in there, there's nothing that he can do, and that both of them will be trapped. But Ezrin has the idea that since the Phoenix is tethered between both life and death, that perhaps with the use of a feather, Callum will be able to use it to guide him and Rayla back to safety. Callum doesn't need any more explanation. He grabs the feather and dives in after her, grabbing her hand before being grabbed by more soldiers of 𝐀𝐧𝐝 as they grab him and pull them both down into oblivion. He reaches for the feather as it floats higher and higher out of his grasp. It isn't long before the two of them are set back down on the other side of the portal, being completely surrounded by the fallen soldiers of 𝐀𝐧𝐝. Presumably, these are servants of Viren. Being completely surrounded and Rayla being the only one who is armed, things are not looking good. She angrily asks him what he's doing here. Now they are both going to be trapped. Callum being in danger was the exact thing she was trying to avoid. He ignores the question and just tells her that they need to get out of there, and they have to get their hand on the feather, as it will guide them back. She begins to climb up higher, trying to grab it, but is attacked by the ghostly soldiers. Callum quickly casts a lightning spell, knocking them back. As Rayla jumps off the top of the soldiers, he boosts her up with an Aspero spell, and she grabs the feather and begins to fall back down as Callum is being grabbed by all of the soldiers. But then he casts another lightning spell, knocking them back and catching Rayla safely. The two of them swim up using the feather to re-enter the real world. They're helped out of the moon pool, and Callum gives her a hug, telling her that he couldn't lose her. She then warmly says that she hates water. He agrees that it's pretty awful, and they share a kiss as the rest of them look on awkwardly, but are happy that they are safe. The sun rises and the two of them sit together again. He asks her how she's doing, and she's not doing well. She tells him that she didn't find her parents and she didn't find Runan, so she has no answers, which was the main reason that she wanted to dive in there in the first place. She then tells him that she did find someone though, referring to Viren. She explains to him how he was trapped in some kind of magical cocoon and that it wasn't like anything else that she had seen there. She tells him that it looked wrong. Callum is confused and asks that since she saw him there, isn't that a good thing? Doesn't that mean that he's truly dead? She tells him that she saw his eyes open and she knew instantly that he may be caught between life and death somehow, but Viren is still on this side of things and he's alive. Callum doesn't really believe her, but Rayla is sure of what she had seen, and she is also going to make sure that Callum would not be hurt. She wasn't going to let Viren take anyone else from her ever again. Callum wants to support Rayla and tells her that if Viren is indeed in the real world, that they will find him together. She tells him that Viren has taken everyone that she loves and that she will not risk him being taken as well, but he sternly tells her that he could have lost her if he hadn't been there earlier at the Nexus. So they're going to do this together, and there's no changing his mind. She agrees. They will leave first thing in the morning, and they will find Viren together. She tells him that she loves him, and they hold hands and walk off. That night, Rayla gathers her things, and she looks over Callum. Rayla tells Callum that she's sorry he can't come with her, but that this is something that she's going to have to do herself. She can't risk him being hurt. And so Rayla leaves to go find Viren alone.
Wow, thanks for watching all the way to the end. That was the Through the Moon review. I, for one, absolutely loved it. Now, it's not going to give everybody that Dragon Prince fix that they're looking for. I feel like some people are probably going to be a little let down by the graphic novel because it doesn't quite scratch that itch that we all need scratched, and that itch is called The Dragon Prince Season 4. But for what it is, a standalone graphic novel set between books 3 and 4, I think it's fantastic and definitely well worth the read. So definitely pick up a copy if you haven't already. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, maybe click that like button and subscribe, and you too can become part of the beautiful Dragon People community here on YouTube. As always, I'm off to rewatch The Dragon Prince. See ya.